It was just another rainy afternoon in the city. The kind of day when the sky looked heavy and people moved fast under umbrellas, trying not to get soaked. Cars rolled by slowly, tires splashing through puddles like they were trying to be quiet. 2. James had just stepped out of his black car near the downtown area. He wore a dark coat and carried a folded umbrella he hadn't even opened yet. He didn't really care about the rain. His mind was on something else, something important. He was on his way to a charity event, one of those big gatherings where rich people talk about helping poor people but rarely actually do much. He wasn't always like that. James used to be someone who believed in change, in doing good. But over the years, life had made him more careful, more focused on business than heart. Still, he showed up. That counted for something. As he walked past an alley between two tall buildings, something caught his ear. Not loud, not clear, just a whisper. A child's voice, soft and shaky. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'll be good." James stopped. He turned his head slightly, trying to hear better. The sound came again, weaker this time, like the boy was running. Out of breath or hope, he looked into the alley. It was dark, even with the gray sky above. Trash bags leaned against walls, and the smell of wet cement mixed with something old and forgotten. At the far end, sitting alone near a broken box, was a small boy. James could barely see his face, but he saw enough. The boy was curled up, holding something close to his chest. His clothes were soaked and too big for him. One shoe was missing, most. People would have kept walking. Most people would have told themselves it wasn't their problem. But something about that whisper hit James hard. Maybe because he remembered being young once. Maybe because he remembered feeling helpless too, he took a step forward, then another. The boy didn't look up at first. He just kept talking, still whispering to whatever he was holding. "I tried. I really did. I promise I'll be better." James crouched down a few feet away. He didn't want to scare the kid. "Hey," he said softly. The boy jumped a little. His eyes shot up, wide and scared. For a second, he looked like he wanted to run. But he didn't. He just held on to that thing. Tighter. "It's okay," James said, keeping his voice calm. "I'm not going to hurt you." The boy didn't answer. He just stared. There was dirt on his face, and his hair was matted from the rain. But his eyes, they were full of something deep. Sadness, fear, hope, maybe. James sat down on the wet ground, ignoring the puddle soaking into his pants. He took off his coat and offered it. "Here," he said. "You're freezing." The boy hesitated. Then slowly he reached out and took the coat. He wrapped it around himself like it was the warmest thing in the world. "You okay?" James asked. The boy nodded, but it wasn't a strong nod. It was the kind people do when they don't know what else to do. James gave him a moment. Then he asked gently, "What were you saying before?" The boy looked down again. "Nothing." "Didn't sound like nothing." The boy didn't respond. He just held the photo tighter. James noticed it now, a small, worn-out picture. The edges were torn, and it looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. "Is that your dad?" James asked. The boy nodded again. This time, his lip trembled. James waited. He knew pushing wouldn't help. Sometimes silence said more than words ever could. Finally, the boy whispered, "He's gone." James felt something tighten in his chest. "I'm sorry, he died," the boy said quietly. "A few months ago." James didn't say anything. He just listened. The boy looked up again, eyes glassy. "I keep coming back here because this is where we used to eat lunch together. When he worked nearby, we'd sit right here, and he'd laugh and tell me stories. He said this place was our secret spot." James looked around. Just concrete, trash, and shadows. But to this boy, it was sacred ground. What happened to him? James asked, careful not to sound like he was prying. The boy swallowed hard. Heart attack at work. He was tired all the time. But he never complained. He just kept working. James felt a pang. He knew what it was like to push yourself until you broke. He just never imagined it happening to someone so young or to their child. "And where are you staying now?" he asked. The boy looked away. "Nowhere." That word hung in the air. James frowned. "You mean you don't have a home?" The boy shook his head. "They put me somewhere, but I left." Left? James repeated. You ran away? The boy nodded. It wasn't safe there. They didn't care. So I came back here. I thought, if I stayed close to Dad, maybe he'd find me. James' throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. He didn't expect this. He was supposed to be on his way to a fancy dinner, shaking hands with donors and smiling for cameras. Instead, he was sitting in the rain with a lost boy who still believed his father might come back. He looked at the photo again. A man smiled in it, tired but happy. His arm was around the boy, and they both looked proud, like they had won something. Just by being together. What's your name? James asked. Leo, the boy said. That's a strong name, James replied. Like a lion, Leo gave a tiny smile. It was faint, but it was there. You hungry? James asked after a pause. Leo nodded. Let's go get something to eat, James said, standing up slowly. Somewhere warm, Leo looked unsure, but what if he comes looking for me? What if he comes back and I'm not here? James knelt again. Your dad loved you, didn't he? Leo nodded. Double quotes. Well, if he loved you that much, he wouldn't want you sitting in the cold, waiting for him. He'd want you safe. He'd want you eating real food and sleeping in a bed? Leo looked down again, thinking. Then he stood up slowly. He was shorter than James expected. And thinner. James pulled out his phone and called his driver. Cancel the event, he said. I've got something more important to do. Then he put an arm around Leo's shoulders and led him out of the alley. Behind them, the wind blew through the empty space where a boy had whispered to his father, hoping someone would hear, and someone finally did. They walked a few blocks through the rain until they found a small diner tucked between two tall buildings. The lights inside were warm and soft, and the smell of soup and coffee came out as soon as they stepped in. Leo looked around like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there. James led him to a booth near the window and sat across from him. A waitress came over with 2 menus and smiled at Leo. You okay, sweetheart? She asked gently. Leo didn't answer. He just nodded and kept his hands folded on the table. James ordered them both hot soup, grilled cheese sandwiches, and 2 big cups of hot chocolate. When the food came, Leo stared at it for a while before picking up his spoon. He ate slowly, like he wasn't used to having enough. James watched him without saying much. He wanted Leo to feel safe, not watched. After a few minutes, Leo finally spoke. Thank you, he said quietly. You're welcome, James replied. You can eat as much as you want. Leo looked up. No one's ever been this nice to me before. James gave a small smile. People can surprise you sometimes. Leo went back to eating. James sipped his coffee and studied the boy. He could see now how tired he was, not just hungry or cold, but worn down in a way that made his shoulders sag even when he tried to sit straight. When they were done, James leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something? He said. Leo nodded. Double quotes. What happened after your dad passed away? Leo's eyes dropped to his empty bowl. He took a deep breath. They came to take me, he said softly. Who did? The people from the place that helps kids when their parents are gone. They showed up the next day. I couldn't stay alone, James nodded. That makes sense, Leo swallowed. I didn't want to go, but I didn't have a choice. He paused, then added, At first it wasn't so bad. There were other kids. Some were okay, but some weren't. And the grown-ups, they didn't really care. Not about us. Just about checking boxes. What do you mean? James asked. Leo shrugged. Like they had rules and schedules and things we had to do? But nobody asked how I was feeling. Nobody cared that my dad was gone. James stayed quiet. He could already tell where this was going. I tried to be good, Leo whispered. I really did. But sometimes I'd cry at night and someone would yell at me to stop. Or I'd forget to clean my room because I was too sad, and they'd take stuff away from me, like books or time outside. That doesn't sound fair, James said. Leo shook his head. It wasn't. He looked out the window for a moment, watching the rain slide down the glass. One day, he said, they moved me to a different house. It was worse. Older kids, meaner. One of them stole my photo of Dad. I got in trouble for yelling at him. James frowned. They blamed you? Leo nodded. They said I was acting out, that I needed to learn control. James felt anger rise in his chest, but kept his voice calm. What happened then? Leo picked at the edge of his napkin. I left. I packed what little I had and just walked out. Didn't know where I was going. Just knew I couldn't stay there. You walked all the way here? James asked, surprised. Leo nodded. Took me days. Slept in parks. Sometimes stores let me sit inside for a bit. Once a lady gave me a sandwich. She didn't ask questions. Just handed it to me. James listened carefully, every word hitting him harder than the last. I came back to our spot, Leo said. The alley, because that's where I felt closest to him. Like maybe he was still there waiting for me. James looked at the boy across from him and saw something deeper than sadness. He saw hope. Fragile, fading, but still there. You know, James said gently, your dad would be proud of you. Leo looked up, eyes wide. He wouldn't blame you for anything, James continued. He'd want you safe. He'd want you loved. Leo blinked fast, trying not to cry. But nobody wants me. James leaned forward. I do, Leo froze. His mouth opened a little, like he wasn't sure what to say. I don't even know you, Leo said quietly. And yet, here we are, James replied with a small smile. Sitting together, talking, eating, you trusted me enough to come here. That counts for something. Leo looked down again. I don't know if I'm worth it. James's heart hurt hearing those words come from such a young voice. You are, he said firmly. You're more than worth it. You've been through something most adults couldn't handle, and you're still here. That means something, Leo sniffled. I just miss him. I know, James said softly. And that's okay. Missing someone doesn't mean you're weak. It means you loved them, and they loved you. Leo wiped his nose with his sleeve. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the photo again. He held it between his fingers like it was gold. James looked at it closely this time. The man in the picture was smiling, arm wrapped around Leo. He looked tired, yes, but happy. Proud? How old were you here? James asked. 7, Leo said. We were at the park. He had just gotten a new job. He said we were starting fresh. James nodded. He was trying his best. Leo looked at the picture again. He always did. There was a long silence. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, the world felt still. Then James asked, Do you remember his doctor's name, or where he worked? Leo looked confused. Why? James smiled kindly. Because I want to help. If you're okay with it, I'd like to look into things. Make sure everything's taken care of. Leo hesitated, like, what kind of things? Well, James said, for starters, I'd like to make sure you're not sleeping in alleys anymore. Leo looked away. I don't want to go back to that place. You won't, James promised. Not unless you want to. We'll figure something else out. Leo didn't respond right away. He just stared at the photo like he was asking permission from the man in it. Finally, he whispered, Okay. James smiled. Good. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick message to his assistant. Then he looked back at Leo. So, what do you like doing? Leo blinked. Huh? When you're not surviving, James said with a gentle grin. What do you enjoy? Leo thought for a second. Drawing, he said. I like drawing. Me too, James said. Used to draw all the time when I was your age. Leo's eyes lit up a little. Really? Yeah, James said. Maybe we can get you some paper and pencils. Start building a sketchbook. Leo gave a small smile. That'd be cool, James grinned. Then we'll start there. Outside, the rain began to slow. Clouds still hung low in the sky, but somewhere behind them the sun was still shining, and, for the first time in a long time, Leo felt like just maybe someone was finally listening, someone who actually cared. The next morning, James woke up early. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like rushing off to meetings or checking emails. Instead, he sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee, thinking about Leo, about that boy sitting alone. In the rain, whispering apologies to a photo of his father, James had seen plenty of hard things in his life: poverty, loss, pain, but something about Leo stuck with him. Maybe it was how small he seemed, even though he carried such big burdens. Or maybe it was because James could see himself in the boy. Not just as a child, but as someone who once felt invisible too, he called his assistant and gave her one job: dig into everything about Leo's situation. Find out what happened after his father died, why he ended up in foster care, and why no one had noticed when he disappeared. He also asked her to track down any letters or messages Leo's dad might have sent before he passed away. Something told James there was more to this story. By noon, James picked Leo up from the hotel where he'd arranged for him to stay temporarily. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and safe. When James knocked on the door, Leo opened it slowly, still wearing James's coat from the day before. "Hey," James said with a smile. "Ready to grab some breakfast?" Leo nodded, clutching the photo of his dad tightly in his hand. He hadn't let it go since they met. They drove to a cafe nearby. The sun was shining today, bright and warm, making the city look almost cheerful. Inside, they ordered pancakes and fruit. Leo ate hungrily again, like he couldn't get enough. As they ate, James decided to ask more questions. "What did your dad do for work?" he asked. Leo chewed thoughtfully before answering. "He worked at a factory during the day, and sometimes nights at a gas station. He said we needed money to fix our apartment." James nodded. "That must have been hard on him." Leo shrugged. "He never complained. He just kept saying he'd make it better someday." "That sounds like a good man," James said softly. Leo smiled faintly. He was. After breakfast, James took Leo to a store and bought him new clothes, shoes, and art supplies. They spent hours picking out colors and sketchbooks. Leo's face lit up every time he found something he liked. "This is my favorite color," he said, holding up a blue pencil. "Mine too," James replied with a grin. When they got back to the hotel, Leo immediately started drawing. He sketched pictures of trees, animals, and even a portrait of his dad. James watched quietly, amazed at how talented the boy was. Later that evening, James received a call from his assistant. She sounded serious. "I found something," she said. "You need to hear this." James excused himself and stepped outside. "What is it?" he asked. "There's a letter," she explained. "From Leo's dad? He wrote it months ago." "Your foundation." James froze. "What?" "Yes," she continued. "It was sent directly to your office. Your team flagged it as low priority and archived it. No one followed up." James felt sick. His own organization, the very thing he built to help people, had ignored a plea for help. "Send me the letter?" he said, his voice tight. A few minutes later, an email popped up on his phone. He opened it and read, "Dear Mr. Ellery, I hope you can spare a moment to read this. My name is Name. I'm a single father raising my son Leo. We've been struggling lately. I work 2 jobs, but it's not enough to keep us afloat. Our rent keeps going up, and I don't know how much longer I can hold on. I'm writing because I heard about your foundation helping families in need. If there's anything you can do, anything at all, I'd be forever grateful. I just want to give my boy a chance at a better life. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Name." James stared at the screen, his hands shaking slightly. This was real. A desperate father reaching out for help, and James hadn't even known about it. He went back inside to find Leo coloring quietly. The boy looked up when James entered. "Everything okay?" Leo asked. James forced a smile. "Yeah, just working stuff." But inside he felt heavy, guilty, like he'd failed both Leo and his dad. The next day, James dove deeper into the investigation. He contacted social workers, hospitals, schools, anyone who might have information about Leo's case. What he uncovered shocked him. Leo's father hadn't just written to James' foundation. He'd reached out to multiple charities, government agencies, and community groups. Each time, he was either ignored or given vague promises that led nowhere. Meanwhile, he worked himself to exhaustion, trying to provide for his son. Then came the worst part: Leo's disappearance. After running away, no one had actively searched for him. The system marked him as non-compliant and moved on to other cases. There were no follow-ups, no concern beyond paperwork. James couldn't believe it. How could a child vanish like that? How could no one care? He shared what he learned with Leo carefully, piecing together the truth without overwhelming him. "Your dad fought hard for you," James said one evening. "He tried everything he could to get help, but sometimes Systems fail, people fail. Leo listened silently, holding his sketchbook close. He loved you more than anything, James added. And he wanted the best for you. Tears filled Leo's eyes, but he didn't cry. Instead, he whispered, I miss him so much. James hugged him tightly. I know, and I promise you, you're not alone anymore. Over the following weeks, James used his resources to make changes. First, he hired top lawyers to fight for permanent guardianship of Leo. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to bring the boy home for good. Next, he launched a campaign to expose the failures in the foster care system. Using Leo's story, with permission, he highlighted the cracks in the system that allowed children to fall through unnoticed. Media outlets picked up the story, sparking outrage and calls for reform. Through it all, Leo began to heal. With regular meals, a safe place to sleep, and someone who truly cared, he started opening up more. He drew constantly, filling page after page with vibrant images. Sometimes he painted scenes of happier times with his dad. Other times he created entirely new worlds, places where nothing bad ever happened. One afternoon, as they walked through a park together, Leo stopped suddenly. What is it? James asked. Leo pointed to a bench under a tree. Can we sit here? Sure. They sat side by side, watching leaves flutter in the breeze. Do you think Dad would be proud of me? Leo asked quietly. James put an arm around him. Absolutely. He'd be proud of how strong you are. How brave. Leo smiled softly. Thanks. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Leo pulled out his sketchbook and began drawing the park. Trees, flowers, birds all came alive under his pencil. Watching him, James realized something important. Helping Leo wasn't just about fixing the past. It was about building a future, a brighter one. One where kids like Leo didn't have to fight alone. And for the first time in a long time, James felt purpose again. Not just as a businessman, but as a human being. Months passed and things began to change for Leo, for James, and even for the world around them. James didn't just take care of Leo, he fought for him. He hired lawyers, met with social workers, and attended countless meetings to ensure Leo could stay with him permanently. It wasn't easy. The system was slow, frustrating, and often heartless. But James refused to give up. One evening, after another long day of paperwork and phone calls, James sat with Leo in the living room. They had turned an old guest bedroom into Leo's space, a cozy little room filled with art supplies, books, and a bed that felt softer than anything Leo had ever slept on before. Now they were sprawled on the couch together, watching cartoons. On TV, James said suddenly, you're doing great. Leo looked up from his sketchbook. What do you mean? I mean, everything. School's going well, right? You've got friends now. You're drawing all the time. Heck, I think you're gonna be better at art than me soon. Leo grinned. No way, your drawings are cool too. James chuckled. Yeah, but yours have heart. Mine just have stick figures. They both laughed, and for a moment, the weight of everything they'd been through seemed lighter. But then James grew serious. There's something I want to talk to you about, he said. Leo set his pencil down. What is it? James hesitated. He wanted to say the right thing. You remember how we talked about your dad? About how hard he worked to make life better for you? Leo nodded. Yeah, well, I've been thinking. Your dad didn't just love you, he believed in you. He wanted you to have opportunities, chances to grow and thrive. And I think it's time we made sure that happens. Leo tilted his head. How? James leaned forward. I'm starting something new, a foundation. Not like the one I had before, the kind that actually helps people. Kids like you? Kids who fall through the cracks because no one notices them. Leo's eyes widened. Really? Yeah, James said with a small smile. It'll be called the Ellery, Foundation for Lost Children. We're going to find kids who need help, give them homes, schools, and support. Make sure no one gets forgotten again. That's amazing, Leo whispered. It's not just me, James added quickly. You're part of this too. Your story is what inspired it. Leo looked down at his hands, overwhelmed. But why me? I'm just a kid. You're not just anything, James said firmly. You're strong, brave. You've been through more than most adults, and you're still here. Still fighting. That makes you special." Leo blinked fast, trying not to cry. "Thanks, James." James reached over and ruffled his hair. "Anytime, kiddo." The next few weeks were busy. James poured his energy into launching the foundation. He held press conferences, gave interviews, and spoke openly about Leo's story not to exploit it, but to shine a light on the broken systems that failed so many children. People listened, donations poured in, volunteers signed up. The response was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Leo started attending a private school James enrolled him in. At first, he was nervous. He hadn't been in a classroom in months, and he worried about fitting in. But the teachers were kind, the students welcoming, and soon enough, Leo found his place. He joined the art club, made friends, and even won second prize in a school-wide drawing contest. Every day after school, he came home bursting with stories. James loved hearing them. For the first time in years, he felt like he was making a difference, not just in Leo's life, but in the lives of others too. One Saturday morning, James took Leo back to the alley where they'd first met. It was sunny now, the gray clouds replaced by blue skies. The trash bags were gone, cleaned up by city workers. The space felt different, brighter, quieter. Leo stood there for a while, looking around. Then he knelt down and placed a bouquet of flowers near the spot where he used to sit. "For Dad," he said softly. James stayed back, giving him space. When Leo stood up, his face was calm. "He'd like this," Leo said, glancing at James. "He always said flowers remind us that even in hard times there's beauty." James smiled. "Your dad was a smart man," Leo nodded. "Yeah, he was." They walked away together, leaving the alley behind. As they drove home, Leo stared out the window, lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" James asked. Leo shrugged. "Just how much has changed, how lucky I am." "You are lucky?" James agreed. "But you're also strong, remember that." As the months went by, the foundation grew. James traveled across the country, visiting cities and towns to find children who needed help. He partnered with local organizations, hired social workers, and created programs to support families. Every success story fueled him further. Back home, Leo became the face of hope. He spoke at events, sharing his journey without fear. His voice carried weight, not because he was loud, but because he was honest. People listened when he talked about losing his dad, running away, and finding James. They saw themselves in him or their own kids, and it moved them to action. One night, after a particularly emotional speech, a woman approached Leo and James. She had tears in her eyes. "My son," she began, her voice breaking. "He's been missing for months. We can't find him. Can you help?" James nodded immediately. "Of course, we'll do everything we can." By the end of the week, they had located the boy a teenager named Alex, who had run away after years of abuse. With the foundation's help, Alex reunited with his mother, and together they began healing. Stories like Alex's became common. Families torn apart by neglect or loss found each other again. Children abandoned by the system found new homes. Slowly but surely, the world started changing one child at a time. Through it all, James never forgot why he started this journey. Every time he felt tired or frustrated, he looked at Leo, at the boy who once whispered apologies to a photo in the rain. The boy who reminded him that even in the darkest moments, there's still light. And every time Leo doubted himself, James reminded him, "You're worth it. All of this is because of you." 1 year had passed since that rainy afternoon when James first heard Leo whispering in the alley. A lot had changed, for both of them, and for countless others whose lives had been touched by the Ellery Foundation for Lost Children. The foundation wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a movement. It had grown into something bigger than James ever imagined, helping kids across the country find safe homes, loving families, and second chances, but today was special. Today, James and Leo were going back to where it all began, the alley. They drove there early in the morning before the city woke up. The streets were quiet, the air crisp with the promise of spring. When they arrived, James parked the car and turned to Leo. "You ready?" he asked. Leo nodded, clutching a small bundle of flowers in his hands. He picked them out himself, a mix of yellow daisies and white lilac. Yeah, he said softly. Let's go. They walked together, side by side, until they reached the spot where Leo used to sit. The alley looked different now, cleaner, brighter. Someone had painted a mural on one of the walls, a colorful tree with branches stretching toward the sky. Beneath it, someone had written, "Hope grows here." James smiled. Looks like this place has its own story now. Leo nodded, looking around. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he knelt down and carefully placed the flowers on the ground. "For Dad," he whispered. "And for me," James stood quietly, giving him space. He could see how much Leo had grown, not just physically, but emotionally. There was still sadness in his eyes sometimes, but it wasn't the same kind of sadness anymore. It was softer. Now lighter. Like the weight he carried had shifted from pain to gratitude. After a few minutes, Leo stood up and brushed off his knees. "Do you think he'd be proud of me?" he asked, glancing at James. "I don't think," James replied, firmly. "I know, your dad would be so proud of the person you've become," Leo smiled faintly. "Thanks, James." They started walking back to the car, leaving the alley behind once more. As they drove home, Leo stared out the window, watching the city wake up around them. "What are you thinking about?" James asked. Leo shrugged. "Just everything. How far we've come, how many people we've helped." James nodded. "It's been a big year, huh?" "Yeah," Leo said, "but it feels good. Like we're actually making a difference." "And, we are," James added. "Because of you." Leo looked over at him, surprised. "Me? I didn't do anything." "You did more than you realize," James said, his voice soft but sure. "Your courage inspired all of this. If you hadn't trusted me that day, if you hadn't let me help, you wouldn't have shown me what really matters." Leo blinked. Fast, trying not to cry. "I'm glad I met you." James grinned. "Me too, kiddo, me too." Later that evening, James hosted a small gathering at his house to celebrate the Foundation's one-year anniversary. Friends, volunteers, social workers, and even some of the kids they'd helped came together to share stories and laughter. The backyard was decorated with string lights and balloons, and tables were filled with food and drinks. Leo stood near the edge of the crowd, watching everyone interact. He felt nervous at first. Big crowds weren't always easy for him, but as the night went on, he relaxed. Kids ran around playing games, adults laughed and hugged each other, and music played softly in the background. At one point, James grabbed a microphone and called everyone's attention. "I want to say thank you," he began, his voice warm and steady. "Thank you to all of you for believing in this mission, for showing up, for caring, for fighting alongside us to make a difference." He paused, looking around at the faces smiling back at him. Then he turned to Leo, who stood nearby with wide eyes. "But most of all," James continued, "I want to thank this young man. Without him, none of this would exist. He reminded me that every child deserves love, safety, and a chance to thrive. And because of him, thousands of kids now have those things." The crowd erupted into applause, cheering loudly. Leo blushed, embarrassed but happy. He glanced at James, who gave him a wink. When the speeches ended, the party continued late into the night. Kids danced under the stars, volunteers shared stories of success, and James mingled with everyone, laughing and shaking hands. As the evening wound down, Leo found himself sitting alone on the porch steps, staring up at the sky. James joined him after a while, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing one to Leo. "Thanks," Leo replied, taking a sip. "It's perfect." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the distant hum of voices and the occasional burst of laughter. "You know," James said after a moment, "this is just the beginning." Leo looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've done a lot, but there's still so much more to do. So many more kids out there who need us." Leo nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, but we'll keep going, right?" "Of course," James said with a smile. "As long as you're with me," Leo grinned. "Always." Months turned into years, and the Foundation kept growing. James traveled less these days, letting trusted teams handle operations in other cities. Instead, he focused on raising Leo, mentoring kids locally, And continuing to speak out about the importance of protecting vulnerable children, Leo flourished. He graduated high school at the top of his class, earned scholarships to art school, and became a passionate advocate for foster care reform. His drawings gained recognition, and he often donated proceeds from his artwork to the foundation. On the 10th anniversary of the Ellery Foundation for Lost Children, James and Leo returned to the alley one last time. This time it was unrecognizable. The mural had been repainted, brighter and more vibrant than before. Flowers lined the edges, planted by volunteers who wanted to honor the memory of those who had suffered and survived. Leo knelt down again, placing fresh flowers on the ground. He closed his eyes for a moment, whispering something only he could hear. When he stood up, James put an arm around his shoulders. "You okay?" he asked. Leo nodded. "Yeah, I'm good," James smiled. "You've come a long way, kiddo." "So, have you?" Leo replied, looking at him. "We both have." They stood there for a while longer, soaking in the quiet beauty of the moment. Then they turned and walked away, leaving the past behind but carrying its lessons with them. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the world. And sometimes a boy whispering in the rain can remind us all of what truly matters.